So first of all, this idea that somehow conservatism is about like local school boards. It's the United States of America, not the United School Boards or County Commissions of America. So the states are the primary vehicles to protect people's freedoms, their health, their safety, their welfare in our constitutional system. What Biden is doing is not constitutional. There has never been a federal vaccine mandate imposed on the general public. I hear people talk about, they do things in the military. Yeah, when I was in the military, they used to give me all kind of stuff. Honestly, I wish I would have thought a little bit, but I mean, whatever it was. But that's much different than regulating the military and then imposing it on civilians in society. It's never been done before. They don't have the power to do it. There's no federal police power. States have the federal police power. So that's from a constitutional perspective, it is worlds apart. Now, some people say, hey, these local governments wanted to lock down businesses. They wanted to force mandates. They wanted to keep the kids locked out of school. Yeah, you're damn right I overruled them on that. And the fact of the matter is, you don't have the right to do wrong. And if I had not stepped in last year and made sure that these local governments couldn't lock you down, couldn't mandate, we wouldn't let them fine. We had kids in school last year because of me, not because of them. And that's just the bottom line. And so people can say, is it the job of somebody that's elected to look out for the liberties of everyone in the state? Or do you just say, hey, if someone's violating your freedom, we shouldn't do anything? The fact of the matter is, if we would have let them lock the kids out of school last year, we would have paid the piper on that for years and years in this state. If we had let them lock down businesses and restrict and do all that, we would have one of the highest unemployment rates in the country. So we had to stand up for people's liberties, their livelihoods, their right to work, people's right to own a business, and it was the right thing to do. But what Biden is doing, he does not have he even admitted he doesn't have the authority to do it. The Psaki admitted that they don't have the authority to do it. And in fact, even 6 months ago, they were all saying, of course you never mandate. Of course you never mandate. And so the question is, do we actually have a constitution that constrains people like Biden, or is it just when he loses patience, he can do whatever the hell he wants to? No, I'll take the Constitution. Thank you very much.
What is your counter argument to those who may have objected to this particular special session, saying that it was possibly a waste of taxpayers' money? What is your answer to those who object to that?
So there are deadlines taking effect very soon where people were going to lose their jobs. If we had waited till the regular session, we would have had thousands and thousands of Floridians lose their jobs over heavy-handed mandates. And so, to me, if you think saving people's jobs is a waste of taxpayer money, heck, that's like page 3 of the governor's manual to save people's jobs. I mean, so what we did was the right thing to do. I wish there were no impending deadlines. I wish that no one was in danger. Then, yeah, we would have waited until the regular session. But the fact is, we had people. And here's the thing. I travel the state a lot. I talk to people. And these are people, they don't even know I'm showing up place, they'll come up. And I can tell you, for the last month and a half, the number one issue that I had people come up to me, and they're very quiet about it, almost apologetic, because, it doesn't fit the narrative to be concerned about these mandates and the way it is. And a lot of the folks aren't viewed sympathetically by people, certainly by like the CNNs of the world. They come up to me and they say, I've been working this whole time. I'm just worried. They say by December 4th, if I don't do this, I'm due. But here's what happened. And they tell me their situation. Most of them have already had COVID and have that. Others they don't think it's the right. So the bottom line is, I don't want them to lose their job. But that's what was going on. And so, we could have, I could have very easily just said, hey, it's all Biden's fault. They said companies are doing it. It's private. It's not me. I'm not personally mandating it on anyone. So whatever. I could have washed my hands of it and said, you know what? It's their fault or their fault. But that's not leadership. Leadership means you get in there and you do what you can to stand by people. That's exactly what we did today. And that's exactly what we're going to continue to do. And yes, this was something that was really big, and we're going to obviously glad that people are going to be able to have some protection. but we also have other stuff that we're going to be doing next year. And these guys in the legislature go up there; they have to work very hard, and we make sure that we get our money's worth on all that. So, thanks everybody. God bless you guys, and we appreciate it.
Mr. President.
Senator from Oklahoma.
Mr. President, last week, President Biden announced that he had lost patience with the American people and that he was demanding people get a vaccination. No, I've had the vaccine, I'm grateful for the vaccine, but it's an entirely different issue for the President of the United States to wag his finger at the American people and to say, I know what you've chosen, but I choose something different and you're going to follow me. To literally instruct every employer with 100 employees or more, every federal contractor, every federal employee to bend to the will of the president and take this injection. That's a very different thing. There are over 39 million Americans right now that we know of that have already had COVID-19, have survived it, and have natural immunity. The president's demand for vaccine ignored those almost 40 million Americans that already have natural immunity. His demand was, I know you have natural immunity, I want you to get this vaccine as well. It ignores cancer survivors that are very, very careful about what goes into their system. It ignores people with religious objections, and there are millions that have religious objections. It ignores individuals that just don't want to do it because they're an American and they don't have to. And they do not like to have a federal government instructing them what they're going to actually put in their body. Now, ironically, this was a random selection of companies that have 100 employees and up. So I assume if you have 99 employees, you're all fine. But if you have 100 employees, it's totally different. There seems to be no accounting for where your employees work. Are your employees all tightly packed, all 100 in one small room, or are your employees all working outside? Do you have 100 employees, but they're in 19 different locations? There seems to be no accommodation for any of those. It's just the president saying, I've lost patience, you need to go get the vaccine immediately. So by Thanksgiving, he's planning on laying this vaccine mandate down on the country. Here's the multiple problems there, as I've already outlined. The 40 million people that have already survived COVID and don't want to do the vaccine. The individuals in different medical treatments, the individuals with different other religious issues that they have. But it's also an issue of trying to have a mandate come down from the federal government with an executive order. That's not how our system works. The President of the United States does not have the ability to be able to just demand behavior from the American people. That's not their role. It's been interesting to me. I've had several people that have reached out to me and say, I found out that the President's order exempts Congress. And so how come you get an exemption and I don't? I've quickly responded back to them because we're a co-equal branch of government and the President's trying to find everybody under quote unquote his purview to be able to do this. But the judicial branch and the legislative branch aren't under his purview. Neither should the American people, because the American people do not work for the President of the United States. And companies of 100 people or more, their chief executive, their leadership does not work for the President of the United States. So now what? There are lawsuits that are pending, but those lawsuits can't move forward until the actual paperwork comes out from the White House. When that actual paperwork comes out in the next couple of weeks, we assume, we've not been told, then they'll have what's called standing in the courts. And litigation from across the country will be able to speak into, and federal judges across the country will be able to move on an injunction on this out-of-control mandate and to be able to say they cannot just compel people to be able to go take a shot because the president wants to get it. So that'll be the first big step. There'll be legislative challenges that'll come through this body. They are slower, so the federal courts are the fastest response to this. But there'll be multiple other groups that will push back on this, myself included. Listen, why would we not respect those individuals that have already had COVID-19? According to an article that's in the Wall Street Journal just today, there was a study out of Israel that shows that the immunity from natural immunity is 27 times more effective than the shot. 27 times, according to the study that was just recently come out. To ignore that and to say that's not enough is absurd. Or to compel Americans, whether they've had COVID or not, to be able to have a behavior just because the president has, quote unquote, lost patience. It's not who we are as Americans. It's not constitutional. It will not stand in the courts and should not stand. We should push back on this.
In the tunnels this morning, socially distant from anybody else. I had COVID. I've had 2 vaccinations. I'm washing my hands. I'm even wearing my mask inside the chamber, but I'm not going to wear it anywhere else. So, Madam Speaker, come and get me.
We have been stunned at the overreach of the Biden administration. What will we do? I will issue an executive order barring any South Carolina cabinet agency from issuing or enforcing any vaccine mandate. Number 2, I will require all state agencies, including the 19 cabinet agencies, to report to me any inquiry or request for vaccination from the federal government. That is allowed by law. Both of those things are allowed by law. Now, we are one of 8 states who are in a lawsuit already against the federal government for its unlawful orders against federal contractors, and it extends beyond them to subcontractors and others in contact with subcontractors. We have filed a lawsuit led by the state of Georgia, joined by 6 other states. There may be others joining later. That's what we're doing with the federal mandate on the federal agencies and the federal employees. But there's another arena, and that is the one involving the Occupational Safety and Health Act. Today, the Biden administration, through the OSHA administration, published regulations requiring most businesses in the country, except the smaller ones, to vaccinate their employees or seek financial punishment. It is unbelievable that the federal government would issue such an unlawful order. It is questionable whether the Congress could even do that, but certainly it cannot be done by executive order or through a federal agency, least of all the Occupational Safety and Health Act. It is difficult to believe that we are seeing what we are seeing. The business judgment is being overwhelmed and ignored. The rights of the people, perhaps civil rights, are being ignored. And the parents' interest in their own children in schools that they pay for with tax money are being trampled, subjected to criminal investigation. It is hard to believe that this is what is happening in our country. So, on the federal employee, the federal agency regulation, we are in a lawsuit and we are fighting that. I'm confident that other states will join in different ways. On the new OSHA regulation that has been published today, we will fight that aggressively. We have been and will continue to fight these unlawful regulations and acts and intrusions on the rights of our people with all the strength that we have. Any lawful objection, any lawful act that we can take to protect our people,
Gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition.
Madam Speaker, I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, you are not God. Your will does not bend the forest or shake the mountains. And let me assure you, your will does not bow the knee of millions of my countrymen who refuse to heed your callous command. To threaten arrest on others for their own personal medical decisions is nothing short of a medical apartheid, and I will not let it stand. For if I am to cowardly bend the knee here like those on the left wish, then what is to stop you all from taking your tyranny to the rest of this country that I love? How dare anyone in this institution attempt to dictate to the patriots of my staff how they may live their lives? For one to think that because they have the title honorable attached to their name means that they may dictate what others may say and think repulses me. What makes this nation special is that in this free land, the people are the royalty. So arrest us if you will, but I will not cower and I will not bend. Madam Speaker, you have come to take away our liberties. But Madam Speaker, in this country, you are outnumbered. With that, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Texas? For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I hereby wish to remove my name as a co-sponsor of Bill H.R. 4390.
The gentleman's request is accepted.
The gentleman's request is accepted. Okay. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Texas seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I call up Cruz First Degree 2. This is an amendment that would prohibit U.S. participation in the creation of a vaccine passport. And let me say, I think there are a lot of Texans, I think there are a lot of Americans across the country that are very frustrated at the government responses to COVID-19. And I think the decision yesterday by the CDC to reverse its guidance and to mandate masks for vaccinated people is the kind of decision that is infuriating people across this country. I believe the CDC's decision yesterday was politics. It wasn't science. It was a decision that somehow pretends vaccines don't work. The CDC months ago rightly concluded that vaccinated people don't need to wear masks because the whole purpose of a vaccine is not to get the disease. That decision was right. The science hasn't changed. The only thing that has changed is the politics. A year and a half ago, the CDC was one of, if not the most respected scientific and medical organization in the country. Today, the credibility of the CDC is in tatters because leadership of the CDC has been willing to allow science to become politicized. We've seen Dr. Fauci take virtually every position on virtually every subject under the sun. We've seen Dr. Fauci in his emails explain his view that masks don't work and are not effective in preventing COVID-19. We've then seen Dr. Fauci change his positions over and over again. We've seen Dr. Fauci say that when he told people masks didn't work, he actually believed masks did work, but he wanted people not to wear masks because he wanted first responders to have them first. I believe that when government scientists and health experts allow politics to trump the science, it does enormous damage to the willingness of the American people to believe anything they have to say. I think one of the aspects of yesterday's decision that illustrates the arbitrariness of this is the brand new decree that everyone in schools must wear a mask. Doesn't matter if you're vaccinated or not, if you enter a school, you must wear a mask. Now, there's no great new scientific discovery that mandates this new edict. Indeed, we've seen throughout this crisis that while COVID-19 can be very, very serious for vulnerable populations, for the very elderly, for those with significant comorbidities, that we've seen the incidence of serious disease with COVID-19 among children is very, very low. And there's no credible demonstration that children are a significant vector for spreading the disease. But CDC nonetheless said anyone who steps in a school must be masked. It's not complicated why. They did so because the teacher union bosses demanded that. That is a political decision. Political players can make political decisions. It wouldn't surprise me to see elected officials deciding I'm going to give the union bosses what they demand, but that is not what the Center for Disease Control should be doing. My view on COVID is it is serious. We should take serious steps to combat it. We have taken extraordinary steps to combat COVID-19, including an unprecedented effort to develop vaccines, hundreds of millions of which have been administered, as we've come together and fought against this disease. But we've also seen stupid policies. We've seen lockdowns across this country that have shut down small businesses, destroyed restaurants, destroyed bars, destroyed generational businesses. We've seen schools shut down. Tens of millions of children sent home for over a year. Children who are falling behind academically, who are falling behind in reading, who are falling behind in math. And the children being hurt are disproportionately low income. They are disproportionately Hispanic and African American. And nonetheless, the edicts to shut down schools have continued. They were utterly unjustifiable. My view is simple. We should not have mandates. What does that mean? That means no mask mandates. That means no vaccine mandates. And I will say, you know, it was interesting as I was reading through this COVID bill, Section 107, talking about what foreign governments are doing. An awful lot of the description of foreign governments can apply to our own government. So Section 107 of this bill says certain foreign governments have taken measures in response to COVID-19 that violate the human rights of their citizens without clear public health justification. Well, I think you could delete the word foreign in that, because we've seen governments here domestically arbitrarily exercising power as well. This Section 107 also says governments using the COVID-19 pandemic as a pretext for repression have undermined democratic institutions, check. Debilitated institutions for transparency and public integrity, check. Quashed legitimate dissent. I might remind you that Anthony Fauci in those emails asked Facebook to silence anyone who said anything different than the government directive on speech, including if you suggested the origin of the Wuhan virus was actually in Wuhan, China, in a Chinese government lab. And Facebook willingly complied, censored that view. You're not allowed to have that view that this escaped from the government lab. Then, miraculously, a couple of months ago, the administration was forced to recognize, well, yeah, there's actually very significant evidence that the Wuhan virus escaped from a Chinese government lab in Wuhan, and beyond that it may well have been developed with government research with American taxpayer funding on gain-of-function research. Those views that were banned for a year are now acknowledged as having very significant scientific basis behind them. My view, there should be no mandates, no mask mandates, no vaccine mandates, and no vaccine passports. And what my amendment focuses on is just the last piece of it. Vaccine passports, and I will say finally, this should be a proposition that is bipartisan. The Biden administration at least claims to oppose vaccine passports. Jen Psaki at the White House said, let me be clear on this. I know there's a lot of questions. Psaki said, the government is not now, nor will we be, supporting a system that requires Americans to carry a credential. If that is right, if that is credible, then I would urge the committee to adopt my amendment prohibiting U.S. taxpayer funds from going to or the American government participating in an international body creating a vaccine passport that would be required for Americans traveling abroad.
I have a number of questions and concerns about the substance of this amendment. However, the text of this amendment is clearly outside the scope of the Foreign Relations Committee's jurisdiction. Indeed, the text is drawn directly from S. 1932, a bill sponsored by the senator from Texas that has been referred to the HELP Committee. This amendment prohibits the use of federal funds for the creation of a vaccine passport system or vaccine tracking database, including at the state level, and it requires that COVID-19 vaccination records be destroyed by all federal departments and agencies. Neither of these issues fall within our committee's jurisdiction. Accordingly, I rule this amendment out of order.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator from Texas.
Mr. Chairman, I think that jurisdictional argument is not justifiable based on the underlying bill. The underlying bill is about policies engaging in a bilateral basis in response to COVID. This amendment is prohibiting participating in an international organization creating a vaccine passport. This bill talks about vaccine monitoring. And this amendment ensures that we're not establishing a federal government vaccine database that is monitoring U.S. citizens in violation of their privacy rights. This bill talks about enhancing transparency of health data, and I think the amendment would protect the privacy of health data from a vaccine passport. And this bill also talks about establishing partnerships with the private sector to improve pandemic preparedness and response. This amendment addresses the same topic, to prevent the U.S. government from working with a third party in the private sector to develop a vaccine passport and force it on the American people. And so accordingly, I appeal the ruling of the chair that the amendment is out of order.
The Senator appeals the ruling of the chair that the amendment is not in order because it is outside of this committee's jurisdiction. The question for the committee is, shall the decision of the chair be overturned? A yes vote means you wish to allow the amendment. A no vote means you agree with the chair that the amendment should not be allowed. As such, I will vote no.